The things that they answered when we were kids were, today they're like, we wish the kids would be into that.
There's 50 kids in their children's grade or 100, and they're all wearing a certain backpack.
If he at least can see the first 10 minutes of the game so that he knows the names of the teams, he knows the names of the quarterbacks, he saw a play, he could talk at the lunch table. Welcome to the Learning Curve podcast, brought to you by Mishpacha magazine.
We are raising children in a changing and challenging world.
So let's tackle the important issues facing from families today.
I am Rabbi Garfield, Menal of Yeshiva Teres Emes in Houston, and I love talking about chinuch.
I am Rabbi Schonfeld, Menahel Yeshiva Katana of Manhattan, Beis Tipra of Manhattan, and director of Camp Aish. I also love talking chinuch and sometimes fishing.
Join us as we answer your questions and discuss the topics that matter to parents the most.
And welcome back to another episode of The Learning Curve. Rabbi Garfield, how are you?
I can't believe we're so deep into the season. Time just flies. It's amazing.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah, I guess so. It's like hard to believe. I think this is, what is this, episode 5 already? Wow.
I think we're up to 5. And Baruch Hashem, we've gotten more feedback with more ideas about topics, which we hope to discuss in the near future. And onward we go.
Yeah.
Let's go straight in.
Okay.
And you go first. Ask me a question, and we'll take it straight. Let's go.
Okay, here we go.
We don't want to waste time with chit chat. We have so
yes.
much
No
to do and
chit-chat
so
from
little
us.
time to do it. Yes, go us.
We're living mechamchem. You see, we're mamish teaching by example. Okay, here we go. My daughter's high school has a handbook of rules, and almost half of them are about tznius. And it's not just for show. They enforce every rule of dress with consequences and with schmoozes and scary stories. All I will say is that this does not make my daughter want to dress more modestly. Is this done in every Beis Yaakov? There has to be a better way. I don't believe this. Listen, I didn't write this question. I don't know where it came from. I know we get a lot of questions, but I don't believe this question. I mean, it's obviously
It's an exaggeration. Yeah, I imagine it's not half, but definitely tznius is a very big emphasis.
Okay. We'll take the kernel of truth and just say to you, how do you think we should handle tznius? How do we handle tznius? And are we overemphasizing things in an unhealthy way?
Would you like to ask a question? Maybe you should ask the question.
That's my question. This is a little over the. Listen, when you ask questions that are just bombastic, it's sort of to me. It makes.
I think the point. I think the point is clear in what this.
Okay,
mother.
Fine. I will let you answer now. Now that
all right, here we go. So, I'm a Talmud in the sugya of tznius. I'm a Talmud of my father. I'm my father in many areas of life. So you're going to decide whether you like what I have to say or not. But this is how it goes. I don't believe, so it's a little, call me a cop-out. I don't think I'm copping out. I don't believe that the proper way to deal with tznius is in a public forum. Generally, I don't believe for sure by men should not be discussing in Yonei tznius. I think that is not tzniistic. So therefore, me and you, maybe this conversation is almost bordering on that. I think to discuss, the Gemara in Chagiga says, Ein Darshan B'Arais, right, Barabim. I think when you have these very specific conversations about in Yonei tznius, and by the way, the Gemara in Sukkah says that Hatznei Aleches, the Gemara says it is referring to the case of the Gemara for tznius is Machnasas Kala. Levais Ameis, Achnasas Kala. So tznius is all encompassing in life.
Tell us more about that Gemara. What is the reference?
The Gemara is quoting a pasuk about Snei Leches. And the Gemara says that Snei Leches, what's it? Leches means lechtecha, to live a life of tznius. The Gemara's example of living a life of tznius is kala, is kala chuppah, is making a modest wedding. So the example that the Gemara uses as like the paradigm of tznius is not in dress, it's in life.
It's interesting that modest weddings was an issue 2,000 years ago, or I don't know if it's a brisa.
A.B. Romberg wrote a song about.
So it's 30 years ago, but I'm going back to 2,000 years ago.
I heard recently from a Baron Lapiansky, an amazing tidbit in history that in the 1960s there were signs, and he saw them hanging up in Bnei Brak from the Stipler, decrying the lavishness of bar mitzvahs. Now imagine, this is the Bnei Brak. What's
Yeah, like what do they have already?
Yeah, they serve two types of I don't know what, of
Yeah,
brumfin or
schnitzel.
so. But anyways,
Okay.
so the world of tznius is much larger than just dress. Even though this question is specifically about dress, but I do think that public conversations about tznius are itself a lack of tznius. And now I'm not saying that there isn't a place for especially in the world of mechanchos and women to discuss this, but in general, I think it's yeah.
Well, but
Fine.
let's
So-
assume the questionnaire is talking about a girls' school, a girl menahalis, a girl handbook, a girl. It's all female.
Right? No, I'm not saying that. One second. I'm not saying that the concept of tznius is an issue. I'm saying that it's almost like, I know you asked the question, but I don't think it is appropriate really to discuss anything specific overall about tznius on a podcast between two men. I don't think it's in general appropriate for or my derech, I should say, for rabbanim and menahalim to get up, definitely in front of men or even in front of women, to discuss Inyanei tznius, I think is not tzniistic. And even so, if there is something in my yeshiva that I feel needs to be addressed, I'll try to have someone else address it, not me. I think I'm very sensitive to talking about tznius berabim. I think it's not tzniistic. Once I'm not answering the question, I'd like to answer the question. And that is, so I'm going to give an answer unrelated to dressing modestly into tznius. And I think maybe davar mitoich davar, anyone who wants can extrapolate and you plug that in to this conversation. And that is, I think this is a yesod about bechlal, and we want to instill our kids with our values and our derech hachaim. I heard once an amazing zug insight from Rabbi Daniel Kalish in Waterbury. I think I was one of his first talmidim ever, not in Waterbury. I didn't learn in Waterbury, but in 1997, he just got married, came back to Camp Heller, and he was giving shiur. I think it was his first year. I was in 10th grade in the canteen, and I sat in the back listening to Rabbi Daniel. But he said the following. He was he was talking about lashon hara, and he said if you want to solve or help someone work on lashon hara, yes, when I was in South Falls, we gave it the after Shachos of Eli Bear, spent 5 minutes learning with us Hilchos Lashon Hara, the 17 Lavin and the 17 Yisurim. Of course, I'm not chas v'shalom belittling the einish and the severity of the lav, but generally a person who wants to work on his Lashon Hara, the avenue and the way to do that is not to talk about how bad it is to speak bad, but it is to fill a person up with Avos Yisrael. We don't say Lashon Hara about our own wife, hopefully, and children and father and mother because we see them in a better light, because we love them and therefore give them benefit of the doubt, or I would never say anything negative. So the way in which you fix Lashon Hara is by speaking Lashon Tov, is by teaching yourself to go to fill the void that Lashon Hara is kind of creating. So in general, in all areas of life, it's like this. Someone wants to ask, there's this like very now viral clip of a person talking to Rabbi Leib Steinman, and the father was trying to get Rabbi Leib to somehow help him get his son to break up with his girlfriend, right? You saw this video?
No.
And it's Rabbi Leib was probably close to 100, and his insight and understanding of human psyche was chilling. So you see this person ask Rabbi Leib, I think Manal, Yesh Abba, there's this father that has a son, Nebuch is going around with his girl, and how do we convince him to break him up? And Rabbi Leib said, he learns him and he said, does the son know that the father loves him more than this girl does? Because if not, why should he break up? If you want to replace that nisayon, right, that relationship that you obviously don't want your son to have, you can't just say no.
Right.
Obviously, something in his life that he's searching for, and you have to fill it yourself. Same thing, Lashon Hara. The same thing that, right? So, in the world of, I'm not going to discuss tznius specifically, but when you want your daughter to have values, it's not just about this is usher and this is usher and cut your hair and wear this length. It's she has to appreciate the value of bas melech k'vayde pnima, of atznei leches. She has to be, because obviously if she's struggling with inyanei tznius, that means she's looking for a certain validation or a certain feeling, self-esteem, however it is that or she just wants to fit in with everyone else. So you have to work on her self-esteem, on her validation, on her fitting in, and you have to pump up her pnimius, right? You have to pump up her hatsnei aleches, because if all you're doing is just pushing down, pushing down, pushing down, you haven't filled the hole, whatever that hole is, or whatever the challenge is. And the word in Lashon HaKodesh for a face is pnim, right? Panim. There's no singular, because we believe that the inside of a person, the pnim, is supposed to mirror the outside of a person. Interestingly, I heard this once from Rabbi Akiva Tatz. Strikingly, the word for a face in English comes from the word facade, which means fake. A facade is a fake exterior, right? So we believe in molding and in stimming the inside with the outside. So that's why, again, without getting into any details about tznius, I think the mahalach, the successful mahalach, of course you need rules. I'm not saying every school, like everything in life. Of course a school needs rules. And of course we don't let kids, but if we're having a bullying issue in school, right, like we spoke to Dr. Novick about, if we're having a bullying issue in school, of course we need rules. Or if we have a chsaron in Bedel Chavera in school, then the mahalach to do it is not to tell the kids how horrible it is to be mean. Of course, if a kid is mean, you're going to do X, Y, and Z. But the real mahalach is to create a culture of ava in the school and a culture of friendship. So I think it's not, of course you need rules, dress codes, and Yonei Tznius, all this is true. But the ikr in the tuffle, the ikr has to be to make the girls feel proud in a crazy world of dress, proud of who they are. That's my non-answer to this
It's a
question.
great answer. It reminds me of something we've spoken about here a lot from Rabbi Yaakovson, like control is not chinuch. And like, if we double down on the control and make everything about control in any area, and in
Right.
tznius, which is a very obviously a visible, it's hard to sneak it. I mean, it's like very controllable in school at least. So if we make it about the control, then we're missing the chinuch, and it almost is counter to the chinuch. So we have to always offset it, that along with the control has to come a very healthy dose of chinuch to, make sure that the control doesn't become the focus. And it's so easy for it to become the focus. Like, what's so interesting? I was listening to you're reminding me now, we had a very chashuva speaker woman, an older, firma woman come to Houston. I forgot who it was, but like someone who goes around and speaks. And she was talking about some Indian related to this, chinuch. And she said she was like 50 years old and she was on a ferry, or 60 years old. And she saw her Beis Yaakov principal. She said, I'm a grandmother. And her first reaction was to check that her skirt was the length that it's supposed to be. And she was saying like how crazy that's the association that she has with that person. It's like when you see someone, is that the first thing you want your mechanech, the relationship between a mechanech and a mechunech?
Right. If I see my Rebbe and the first thing I think of is my hat.
Right.
Am I
Like
wearing
there's
my-
something off, right?
Right.
Like it should be about he cares about me, or he's wondering about me, or I miss him, or I love him. But like, do I look the way he would want me to look? Like that is not the goal of that. So
Rabbi, may I ask our listeners, did I ever share the story that happened with, I know I shared it about the haircut with the boy in your school,
yes,
but my camp story I've shared?
about dress, I don't remember.
So I'm going to share a story that happened.
Hold on, let's clock it in. The episode has been going on for 13 minutes, and we are now talking about camp. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. So this story happened a while ago. Not going to say how long ago. And I'm trying not to give away the details because I'm sure this boy is going to be listening. And
Yeah,
his
of
mother
course,
will be
of
listening.
course.
But you know what? I'm going to say the story. I think it's okay. His name is Yankee. That's the name of all the boys in my stories. Yankee came to camp one year, showed up with a haircut unbecoming of a yeshiva boy. And this is a boy, and I called his mother, and I said, what happened? I knew this boy. What happened? And she said, yeah, he struggled this year. She wasn't sure. Bottom line is he walks into camp with a really, 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 what I felt was an inappropriate haircut. His counselor, a Mitsuyan Atzum, but very Yeshivish, so just didn't know. He comes to me the first day. He's like, Schonfeld, what are we doing here? What are we doing with this kid? He walked into my bunk and he looked like he's from who knows where. So I'm not saying every case is like this, and I'm not saying every scenario is different. I knew the boy. I knew the camp. I didn't think this boy's hair would bring down the rest of the bunk. So I said to his counselor, here's the deal. Yankee came in with a haircut, or a non-haircut, whatever it is. We are not going to say one word to him about his hair the entire summer. Mach nicht wissendig. It doesn't exist. We're going to ignore the hair. It's going to be hard. It's glaring. It sticks out. We're ignoring it. He's like, so we crazy. That's what we're doing. And we did. So we did. And he had a wonderful summer. Again, he was a boy, whatever his summer was. His mother calls me the day after camp ended. I remember where I was standing, crying. And she says, Rabbi Schonfeld, the Yankee came home from camp. And he said, Mommy, I'm ready for a regular haircut. And she said to him, why? And he said, because finally, they didn't judge me for my hair. They judged me for who I was, so I don't need my hair.
Wow.
And this boy today is steiging, and it's a small story. But the point is, we could have, and I'm not saying that there are scenarios where control is important, where you have to make a rule and it could ruin the environment. If the kid, what happens if it doesn't? I'm using it's a muscle. It's not, do not use this at home, right? But the point is that we decided to fill him up as opposed to focusing on his one struggle or whatever it was. It wasn't right on his chitzonius, and I think there's a tremendous tale.
100%. All right, let's go on
Right.
to question. Now that we solved that one,
Well, and anyways, there's a question that you didn't think was real anyway. So anything
there's no
I said,
way.
would
There's no. I mean, it was written by someone, but there's no way it reflects an actual reality. I don't believe.
it's an
Maybe I'm
act,
too out of
yeah.
touch. Okay.
As we discussed with Dr. Novick, right? We live in a society where our president speaks a little bit in exaggerations. So we have picked up that I think the point is made. Fine. Speaking of sensitive topics, Rabbi, you win the sensitive question of the year so far. And I'm going to ask you the question. I will leave and come back, and you let me know when you're done. And here we go. Why would someone ever live out of town? No, that's no.
Mosaic isn't out of town. Cut it out. Don't stop putting down
There
your
we
own
go.
town.
While experience and wisdom grow with age, there is also the challenge of staying connected to the changing world of today's youth. Should yeshivas prioritize keeping seasoned rebbeim, even if many struggle to relate to the newer generation? How should yeshivas balance respect for experience with the evolving needs of talmidim?
Wow, that is quite a, I don't want to say toxic, but a sensitive question that has to be handled extremely sensitively for so many reasons, mostly because anyone who's a Rebbe for that age, you're talking about someone who's getting up 65, 70, 75, whatever the age is, has committed their lives to Klal Yisrael. They are Tashmishe Kedusha. They are a person who has committed years and years to the halacha work of being mechanech children, and they need to be treated with that respect by all of us. Now, the challenge would be, I do not accept the premise that experience means you're less in touch at all. I don't think that's true at all. You could have rebbeim that are old and very in touch, and children who are young or totally out of touch. So I don't think I would agree with that formulation of the question. But I would say that there are rebbeim who get older and less effective. So it's not a function of age. It's a function of whatever else is going on, or however they're burning out, or whatever's going on with them. So the question, I think that it's a fair question to ask, is how do you balance the need to be respectful of rebbeim who have committed their life to chinuch and are not at the same level that a younger person would be, and how do you address that? And but I do want to say that it has nothing to do with age. Like I said, there are many older mechanchim who are exceptionally connected and aware and effective, and that's not a chisaron at all. That's a gayish. That's actually a very gayish hashkafa, that younger is better by definition.
Right. Right.
Certainly not a Yiddish adarab. If anything, a Yiddish hashkafa is that bibnei sevas tokum. We respect age. We value age. We value experience. So that said, I would like to think that the work of this question is that every school should have a retirement plan that starts when the rebbeim are younger, so that you don't get in this position. And if you are in such a position, the Rebbe, no one wants to spend the money to support a Rebbe respectfully. But if we are able to set up a scenario where there is sufficient funds, I think most rebbeim would be okay stepping to a secondary position or a resource room.
Depends how long you're in the school for,
No
right?
matter how you're long. Let's say you're there for 36 years. That's 3 years of salary.
It's 3.5 because you get paid 10 months a year, right?
Okay. So
Three
now
and a half
what?
months, 3.5. You're talking that's $300,000 or whatever,
I
something like
know
that, right?
that is not enough to live into your retirement if you're 70. The average life expectancy, Baruch Hashem, is much higher. The guy needs 15 years.
So what are you suggesting?
I'm suggesting that instead of let's take that scenario. The guy's 70 and he's been in the Misa for 36 years, so he gets 3 years or 3.5 years. So if he takes a Chodesh Hashanah, he's 73 and a half. Okay, when he runs out of money. Now, obviously, he has to be smart about how he allocates that money, so he could be 76, but it's not enough money to live comfortably.
Yep.
So I would rather suggest that 36 years ago, this school has a 403B or whatever kind of retirement plan, and they do a 3 to 5% match, and they encourage him to put away money for all those years, and it grows for 36 years. You're dealing with a very different scenario. Plus, the school can make sure he owns his house at a certain age, so that that'll be a appreciating investment, and then that's a whole different scenario. So we don't do it because it's expensive and it's hard. But then you have to live with the bed you make. And I don't have much rachmanis for a school that tells me they have a 7-year-old rebbe who's not effective and they don't know what to do because they can't afford it. I'm sorry, the guy committed his life to you, and now it's time to pay up. I will just say that I'm very connected to Yeshivas Ner Yisrael. I'm Baruch Hashem, I'm an alum, and I'm Mishpacha there. And they see it as a lifetime responsibility. I don't think they pay particularly well. I don't know specifically. I don't get the sense that, they're very Baltimore in their salaries. Let's put it that way. But they recognize that you've committed yourself to their kehillah, to their school yeshiva, and they take care of you ad me'avasrim and your almana. I don't know exactly the numbers, but they do it in a way that you're mechubed. You have an apartment, you can live there, you're taken care of. And that's really the way every Meiser should see their rebbeim.
Beautiful. I want to add a couple of points. When I was part of my interview process 5 years ago to get the job in Yeshiva B'Tam Manhattan, so they had a whole list of questions. How would you deal with this? How would you deal, right? And they asked this question with, I don't know, this is not exact language, but this was a question: how do you deal with rebbeim in general and in the future? And I said to them that I heard B'Shem Rabbi Yisrael Belsky that this is the toughest question in chinuch.
Really?
to answer.
Wow.
Of right. That being said, I said to the board, the way you make this question easier, you should not be asking me this question. You should be asking everyone in this room this question. Because as you said, when people find out what rebbeim get paid, they don't believe it. Like, yeah, I'm sure the average rebbe gets like 180, right? I mean, I know it's hard to live on 180, but we're not having that. We're not having a podcast about.
You got the
about
80 part right. It's the
Yeah,
one.
and they're like, what? A starting salary for rebbe is what? But how could he live? The answer is that we don't pay our rebbeim enough.
Right.
Period. We want our rebbeim to be superstars. We want our rebbeim to be available at night. We want our rebbeim to be psychologists and therapists for our children. We want our rebbeim to be geschmack and to be talented, to have and know how to use a smart board and have all the different modalities. And we pay them a wage that is not livable. And they live hand to mouth, and every chasana we're raising money for them. We as we, I know, and I'm not breaking grounds, right? This is, I know Rabbi Fruchtendler has been banging the table at the Talmud Sar for a long time. This is something, there's no good teretz, because yeshivas don't have money. Chodesh Hashanah is a start, but if there was a way to make rebbeim mechubedik their entire career, then when you get to that situation and scenario and you have to make that decision about the Rebbe, if the Rebbe's finances are set up, as you said, I think it becomes more tenable. I want to add, we in, what do you call our monthly meetings? Yeshiva Leadership Group?
Yes.
What's it called?
Yeshiva Leadership Group. Absolutely.
Rabbi Garfield, in one of his many hats and scarves, you run the Yeshiva Leadership Group. It's basically a chat room, a kosher chat room for Manalim. It's an amazing chevra of Manalim around the country. So we once, I don't know if you remember this, 3 years ago maybe, we had a Gershon Miller from Detroit, and this question was posed. Gershon Miller, who's I don't know if he's a household name to everyone. He should be an Adam Chashav, a really special person, originally from Gateshead, Manchester, somewhere that has an English accent. And this question was posed, and what he said was two things. He said, first of all, it is a chisaron to have a school with just young, incredible rebbeim that are 33 and 36 and we're very young. there is, as you said, they say batakum, but there's also not. There's a certain that Rebbe that's a little older, and maybe isn't as fast as he used to be up the steps, and isn't able to play ball if they do the kids anymore. But the fact that he's an Adam Chashiv, and the fact that he has a certain, serenity about him, Nuchas HaNefesh, and he could talk about Amunah in a way that a 35-year-old Rebbe can't talk about. He said having a balance in the yeshiva is incredibly important. And there are values that an older, more experienced, super experienced Rebbe brings that a younger Rebbe doesn't have. That being said, he did say that he felt, because I think someone asked him, should Akaras HaToiv to a Rebbe who's been this incredible Rebbe for 30 years, should that play a role in keeping the Rebbe on, even if, listen, Rebbe maybe is not so whatever it is, he's not up to, but Akaras HaToiv. So his response was a little sharp. Well, I felt sharp, but he said, who owes him Akaras HaToiv? The Moisid or the current boys in the class? The current boys in the class don't own Akaras HaToiv. They never had him. So it's unfair to use someone else's chiyah for Akaras HaToiv to therefore, if the Rebbe isn't a good shidduch for this class, to have these boys be the ones to be makar toiv to someone that they don't have that chiyuv to. It's an interesting spin. Yeah, Rav Kalman Epstein, our Shiva in Shara Torah, once had that. I tried to get a boy into Shara Torah, and he didn't take him. So I called up my Rebbe, and I said, this person did a personal favor for Rav Kalman. Personal favor. And I said, Rebbe, I wasn't chutzik. Of course, I type, whatever it is. So Kalman said to me, and it could be it was just a great line to get away when you don't want to accept kids into yeshiva. Rav Kalman said, if he had done a taiva for the yeshiva, then at Akaras HaToiv, the yeshiva should take his son in. He did a personal favor for me. Ich bin nicht the bailam after yeshiva. It's meila. It's meila ba'ekdish.
Wow.
You're asking me to let someone into yeshiva because of something did personal for me. It's meila ba'ekdish.
That's great.
It's a good one. It's a good one to keep. But yeah, this is the it's the toughest question in the world, and there is also how you deal with an Rebbe toward the end of their career, how you pay them.
I don't think it's the toughest question. I hate to disagree with Gershon Miller, who said it was the toughest question, or Gershon Miller, because it's a money question.
It's Olbelsky. It's not only a money question. It's not true.
It's a lot of a money question.
Not true. These are rebellion that this is their chiyuv, this is their life, this is their identity. They teach Torah to children. That's how they get chiyuv.
I know, but if they had enough money that they could continue to live nicely and learn and tutor and spend time with their grandkids and move to Lakewood, to Jackson, or wherever they move to.
When they're ready, when they come to you and they say, Rabbi Garfield, I'm done. But what happens when you go to them and get to age, whatever, and you're like, I think it's time, and they're like, what are you talking about? How dare you? I'm rocking. So you tell them, no, I'm going to pay you off.
It helps.
Everything. Kesef helps for everything,
Yeah,
right?
I'm saying it. I think most of the cases, if you look at it, a lot of it has to do with the pressure, financial pressure.
Right. So then, I think Chaim Berlin has a mandatory retirement age.
Correct.
Age of 70.
Correct.
YSV, I don't want to speak about the yeshivas. YSV has yeshivas are trying to create.
But I want to know what they do. I'm sure Chaim Berlin, I would imagine, that they take care of a Rebbe. They don't just drop you at 70.
This Chaydish Lashana, which are Rebbe's.
That was made, 50 years ago? I don't know what the source of that is, but the world is...
Rabbi Moshe Feinstein. It's Rabbi Moshe. But if you have to realize the Rebbe's been a Rebbe for 30 years. Chaydish Lashana is $350,000. That's not bad severance. So person, right? Retirement funds, right?
That is bad. It is bad. If you talk to a retirement planner about how much money you need to live in retirement, they tell you, I've had those conversations. It's a lot more than Chodesh Lashana.
Right, of course, I know it, but it's definitely a.
And the Rebbe can't put away money all the years because he's poor.
Right.
So it's a self-fulfilling issue. That's why the Mossad has to facilitate him to put away the money. By the way, they're also putting away money. You take off the Chodesh Lashana from what they put in. So, the Mossad is also saving, I guess, setting
No, Chodesh Lashana is above salary. You're not taking it out of the salary.
No, but let's imagine if a Rebbe's making 100,000, right?
Which is a nice imagination, by the way, right? If you would take a poll of what percentage of Rebbeim are making $100,000 a year, it would be 1%.
Right? No, I know,
more.
no one is. I just want to keep the numbers easy.
Okay. No, but I think it's important for people to know the Rebbeim are not making $100,000. How crazy is that?
Okay, fine. $50,000. So 3% is 1,500. So if he puts 1,500,
Right.
The school will put 1,500. The 1,500 that the school puts is on top of his 50, right? So they're really paying him 51,500.
Right.
That 1,500 is used off of Chodesh Hashanah at the end. Meanwhile, the Rebbe has put away 1,500
Off?
of his
Wait, it's
own.
off? It's instead of Chodesh Lashana?
Well, you have to do the math. That it should, yeah, meaning that counts towards the Chodesh Hashanah debt.
Towards. Okay.
But meanwhile, he's getting the interest or whatever investment of 30 years off that 1,500.
And the school is saving because he's taking off 1.5. No, he's not saving. They're not saving that.
It's not necessarily saving, but his money's going to grow at a much higher rate.
Right.
Plus, he puts
Right.
away 3 of his own, like 1,500 of his own.
Right.
And it compounds. You know how that works. Like the 3,000, if it goes up X percent, you keep
Yep.
every year it compounds on itself.
Yep.
So I think that it's not a full solution, but it's a very significant step, and I'm proud to say our school does that. And I'm looking forward to hearing that Yeshiva Town of Manhattan joins us as well.
You know, the challenge is that if a Rebbe he only gets Chodesh of 30 years if he's in your Moshe for 30 years. But what happens when he's been a Rebbe for 35 years, but he's only by you for 12?
That's the beauty
Or
of the
16.
system is he takes it with him.
Right.
You don't lose
Right.
your 403B when you go from school A to school B.
Right. Right.
So in theory, if everyone would just agree to do this, it would help everyone. And I think terms
Yeah,
are
of course.
tried it in meetings and the president's conference, they act about it. But it's the kind of thing like, everyone has to
It's
do it.
yeah, right. Everyone has to do it, and it's about money. It's about the community who all we want is our Rebbeim to have menuchas nefesh. And if we could pay our Rebbeim another, I don't know, I mean, it's talking about a lot of money, but $50,000 more for each Rebbe.
That's another parsha. But that doesn't, I'm talking about retirement. We're talking right now about older Rebbeim who need to retire, who don't have the financial ability to do it benachas. They have to do it, but not benachas. Okay, let's move on to our spotlight question.
Ooh, very good. I like the way you did that.
We need to get some kind of like cool music in there. Maybe we could talk to post-production about that. So we could say,
Yeah.
spotlight question. All right, here we go. Okay, go ahead. You read it, Rabbi Schonfeld. So you read it with serious.
I'll try to
face.
read it with seriousness. Dear
Yes.
TLC, my teenage son and daughter come home every week with another part of their upbringing that is quote unquote against Hashkapas HaTorah. Concerts are prust. Sports is Chukas HaGayim. Harry Potter is Kishuf. Family vacations, Bittul Torah. On and on and on. How can we be expected to raise healthy and well-balanced kids if every mode of entertainment and fun is looked down on?
Okay.
The end of the question.
Yeah. Wow.
So I asked it, so you get to discuss it first. This
Oh,
is
wow.
a
I wasn't ready.
It's one of those questions before you bring on, and you'll introduce our guest, but before we bring on our spotlight guest of the week, the challenge with a question like this, it is so totally on where you live and what part of, right? Is this person live in Meir Sharim? Does this person live in, I don't want to say other neighborhoods, right? But there are different neighborhoods that have different standards, whether all of these concerts, sports, Harry Potter, family vacations. So it's very hard for me and you to have a conversation dakistic, right? Micro as opposed to macro, because because it's so vast. What me and you are not the Rebbe of these parents.
You're saying
We're
Harry
not there
Potter in
for
Bnei Brak is not Harry Potter in Houston.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And I'll just share that a mother called me this year. They got tickets to a sporting event, and she wanted to know. She said, "I have a bunch of older kids. I've never taken them to a game. We never take them to a game. We got these free tickets. My son is in 3rd grade. Do you think we should take him?" And I said, "Mrs. Goldstein, I don't think you should take them. You should send them to me so I could take my kids." I said to her, I go to sports games. So I take my kids to sports games. Maybe I have a little bit of I hide so no one can see that I'm there. Well, we can talk about that separately, of which people I've met at sports games. I've taken some sports games. But I said, if your family does not follow sports and doesn't go to sports games, then just because you got free tickets, you should not take your son to a sport game.
All right, that's not a reason to change your whole hashkafa.
Right.
100%. And yeah, I was just going to say that, like, my reaction is a little like parents play a bigger role in this than the school. Like, I would tell my kid, okay, that's what your school said, but our family is comfortable, and like trying to balance that.
In Mesivta, I think the Mesivtas really are impactful and make a big imprint on the hashkafa of that child.
That's true. Okay, well, we're lucky we have a true mechanech, an expert, someone who really has put a lot of thought into these matters with us. Our spotlight guest is Rabbi Nosson Muller, the Manal of Yeshiva Torah Tzvi, Jonah Dax, Beis Yaakov in Chicago, and the renowned mechanech and public speaker. Welcome, Rabbi Muller.
Thank you, everybody. Good to be here.
Okay, so welcome, Rabbi Muller. We are talking about the issue of kosher entertainment and how to find the right balance between, a home hashkafa and a school hashkafa, and then just the general sort of stance that so many of the things that our kids find themselves doing become usher or become inappropriate. It's almost like, you could almost predict when you see something trending that it's going to be usher soon. Remember those spin toys? I don't know if they're still around.
Fidget spinner with a fidget spinner?
Did you usher
Yeah.
them in your schools?
Actually,
No, what do you mean? If I asked them, what would I
Yeah.
use?
I remember at first they're like, should we answer it? I'm like, it's not worth it. They'll come out with the next thing before we answer it.
we got crazy bones, everything. There's always going to be something in there. But I think it goes the other way. It goes the other way too. I think the things that they answered when we were kids were, today they're like, we wish the kids would be into that. Like Mordechai Ben David was like the worst thing ever, and now we're like, with all the songs and music going on, please bring him back. He should be Malach Yom and Vishanim, and he's great, and I love listening to him. But we got bigger problems than that today, right?
So I want to jump right to that, Mullah, because there's this thing of the reason why we have to ask all these things. It used to be you could go to a bowl game and it was sneers. It used to be you could go to a concert and nowadays everything is much worse. But 30 years ago, they were saying the same used to be. Right? In the 1970s, they were saying, "Oy vavoy, after the Beatles came out, what happened to music and sports? It used to be they wore hats to Yankee Stadium, and now they don't wear hats." There's always the free dikdars given besser, right? There's always what used to be was better. So, and in 30 years from now, I don't know what's going to be, but
Ari, isn't that true?
so I guess the question is, you're telling me, oh, the 1960s sports games were fine to go to. The reason why we were allowed to go to games in the 60s or watch cartoons in the 80s is because they were fine then. But 30 years ago, it was the same shrai from there were plenty of people that were screaming then that these things are horrible.
I mean, listen, I could tell you, a basketball game, for example, like when I was a kid, there were no cheerleaders and dancers and all this stuff. They didn't have that at the 76ers at the Spectrum with Julius the Dr. Irving. I'm telling you.
You were sitting so high up, you didn't have.
No, and even the screens, even those huge mega screens, nothing happened, but during the seventh inning stretch, they would go around and you'd wave, and somebody would always stick their tongue out, and that was it. Today, what they're showing on the screens, and it's not the game that's so bad as much as the commercials and everything else that comes along with it. And
I was shocked. I went to a Dallas Stars game maybe 10 years ago. I live in Houston. We don't have a hockey team, but Dallas has a hockey team. Says, oh, we could go see a hockey game. They had cheerleaders at a hockey game. I couldn't believe it.
I didn't know that, because I always tell parents, if you got to go to a game, whatever, you need to give your son that outlet. Do a hockey game, because there it's
right. Well, I don't know. Maybe it's only a Dallas thing, but I was shocked. I mean, I can't speak. That's the only game I've been to.
Rabbi Moshe, could you give us, a little bit of, I guess, your bird's eye view of this sugya of finding that you want your kids to be kosher entertainment?
Rabbi Schonfeld, why don't you read him the question?
Yes, Rabbi Garfield didn't like the question, so I'm going to read it. My teenage son and daughter come home every week with another part of their upbringing that is quote unquote against Hashkafas HaTorah. Concerts are prust, sports is chukas hagayim, Harry Potter is kishuf, family vacations are bittul Torah, on and on and on. How can we be expected to raise healthy and well-balanced kids if every mode of entertainment and fun is looked down on?
change their school or move out of town. You just labeled a lot of things there. I could see sometimes what's wrong with the concert, sometimes what's wrong with sports, sometimes what's wrong with Harry Potter, but it's all relative, and I think you started with that word called balance. That is the key word to chinuch, is balance. There's got to be balance. First of all, you got to know your child. You got to know your city. You got to know your school. You got to know your people. It doesn't always mean the whole family is the same. I think, Shlomo Mamel said that a long time ago. Let's just pick one of them, sports. I think sports is an unbelievably healthy outlet. First of all, for sure, to play, it's important. If almost I would tell you, if your son is not good at sports, hire someone to teach him how to play. Most kids need that. They need that. Following sports, it's something that we all get swept away with, most of us. And you look at a lot of Gedolei Yisrael today, previous generation you talked about, good, wholesome mechanchim today who are huge fans, and you're talking to one of them right now. Montreal Canadiens we lived it, but that was maybe a little bit the problem. We lived it. Lived it is something that I do talk about a little bit to the boys. You know, even if you're going to follow a sports team, don't live it. Don't idolize the boys. You want to say, when I say the boys, I mean the players. Don't idolize them. They're not our friends. They're not the people we look up to. So on and so forth. But I'd rather a boy, throw himself into sports a little bit, or even, music, as long as it's good music, which we could talk about soon. But
Right.
do that because
All right, Mo, I want to ask you a
Yeah.
sports question. I won't be about the Canadians, but I want to ask you a sports question. I don't know what happens in Chicago. My sister, cards on the table. My sister works for you in Chicago, Mrs. Levovitz, and Rafal is a Talmud of Yuna. I know, so yeah, but yeah, das Chachma Musar. Yeah, you learn what to, yeah, Yeruchim's the name. So I don't know what they did in Houston. I don't know what they did in Chicago. Super Seder, right? This is a thing that certain yeshivas did by the Super Bowl. They incentivized boys. Forget Eretz Yisrael. I'm leaving Beis Medrash out of this. 6th, 7th, 8th graders, there was a certain push in yeshiva not to watch the game. There was a Seder of Subanim the night of the game. Is that a great thing? Is that a power thing? Or is that maybe not? Where I don't know what you did, but where do you land on Super Seder?
we didn't do it for various reasons. Again, we're the city mice, we're a city school. There's a lot of people who wouldn't. Let's put it this way: the spectrum is there's a lot of people who wouldn't dream of watching the Super Bowl, and like almost like what are you doing? We're not watching it anyways. And then there are some people that no matter what you're going to offer, they're not coming to the Super Seder anyways. So you're dealing with the in between. I'm really serious. It's like interesting the in between part that you're going to get because you're going to give him a few chicken nuggets and French fries that he's not going to go watch the game. It's very few far and beyond. So what usually happens is that all the people who don't watch have this great supper, which I'm very happy for them, but it didn't do so much
Right.
of pulling away a guy who was really, really going to watch the game. What we do talk about,
But would you be interested in pulling away?
again, if a boy is serious about it, I don't see why not. Listen, you can't compare Black Gemara to anything else in the world, right? So the answer is yes.
No, of Chas v'shalom. What I mean is, and there were boys in my yeshiva also, we did not have Super Seder. There were boys that were proud of the fact they did not watch the game. They learned, at that time. I remember elementary school boys, yeah, we have chashuv boys. But the message of Super Seder is a way of saying that watching the Super Bowl, which is something that for better or for worse, most people do, is wrong. Right? It's a statement, and therefore the kids who go to watch the game and don't go to Super Seder now feel like they're maybe doing the wrong thing.
It's all in presentation. Again, I'm a little guy, but we've all been there, done that, and Baruch Hashem turned out pretty good, pretty good. We're actually doing a chinuch podcast together, so it's not so bad. It's not so bad. So to say that you're degrading the other boy, I wouldn't go that far. I really wouldn't. That being said, again, we don't do it in our yeshiva, but I will talk about it. Come out every year, the Friday before, during the Chumash shmooze, there'll be some kind of, it's not a Super Bowl shmooze, but there'll be a reference to something happening on Sunday. And just remember who we are, and just remember who they are, and just remember not to get carried away, so on and so forth.
With my own children, I have a rule. We don't do rules about Garfield, right? Because we want influence, not power. But one of the things that I tried very hard to be makbid on is I don't let them buy jerseys with the names of athletes on the back for a long time. I'm not saying I won that throughout but for this Nakuda, follow sports, but we don't wear their names on our backs. And don't say, but I saw your son last. I'm not saying I won every battle, but the idea of hanging up posters in rooms and and the jerseys with the name in the back. I had a Talmud once came. He was so excited. He showed me I think a towel or something, a sock that an athlete threw at him after a game. And I said, I hope hopefully you don't get any diseases. But it was like that to me is the geder of following it. It's fun. It's exciting. Yeah. Okay. Next, concerts. We'll see how much time we have when we run out of time. Concerts.
So concerts creates a little bit of a different issue. Again, it's not so much the singer. If you're going, it's almost, if you go to, if Beethoven would be somewhere out there and he's holding a concert, and you like to listen to certain types of music. It could be calming, it could be inspiring, it could be obviously if it's Yiddish music, but I'm going all the
Right.
way to the left. Again, it's part of the atmosphere. Like we said earlier, you go to a baseball game. 40 years ago, there was everyone dressed properly. There was no commercials. There was no blaring. Who knows what going on? Okay, you knew if the person next to you was a male or a female. It's all different today. So when you go to a concert and if they're singing, let's just change the word concert to kumsitz, and you have a whole different question. Correct? Why? Isn't it the same thing? What's the difference between concert and kumsitz? One thing is different. Kumsitz connotes uh
One makes money.
no, okay,
No,
but it's more than that.
inspiration,
It's more than
ruchni.
Yeah, I know. I meant this because the
There's
kumsitz is right.
Osiris,
Kumsitz
there's
is
something going
ruchni.
on.
Eitan
A
Katz.
kumsitz
There's
is
Yeah.
ruchni.
Titan. There's Titan. There's Titan. A person could grow. A person could. Kaya Kanagin is unbelievable. I don't think most people are going to concerts to grow. And on the contrary, many times, as you've seen and heard, there could be teruvis, there could be preachers, there could be, you know, improper behaviors. And then in a comedy, we put our foot down. We say no, we don't do these things. Now, if it's a children's concert, it's different. Let's say again, I'm just for no better Miami Boys, remember Silver Zemmer, all those things, and you go do that or Uncle Moshe concert, you know, you're not going to have Wildkeit. You're not going to have preachers. So if you really need to take your child, like we said earlier, if you got to go to the game, go to a hockey game, except for in Houston. If you got to do it, do there. So then I would say the same thing. If you got to go to a concert, make sure it's an Uncle Moshe concert. Make sure it's a
Right.
so on and so forth. It's not.
I remember after COVID, we had Joey Newcomb come. It was, I don't know how popular he was. I wasn't familiar with him. It was so inspirational. The whole place, because we were like so cooped up, like we needed to let it out, and he lit the
So
place
Joey's a
up.
holy brother, and again, his style is totally different, and his surah is different, and Echams, you just pointed. What about an Abish Brot concert? I mean, come on, you're not going to ask that
Is
question.
that a thing?
You're not going to ask
I thought
that
that's
question.
Musaf.
So it's a not fair question. Parents have to realize and know what yes, what no, where the boundaries, and again, not fall for the Kool-Aid of everybody's going and everybody has it. That's like we all know that. We've heard it so many times. We've tried it on our own parents so many times.
Let me ask you maybe like a macro as opposed to a macro. Forget any of these specifics, concerts or sports, Harry Potter. It seems to me that, and maybe I don't want to give you the answer, that it used to be that Rosh Hashivas, Rabbanim, parents, children, the culture was not something that we ran away from. Reading novels, right? Reading newspapers, following sports. That culturally being part of American culture was done. We become a much, much more sheltered, insulated, better word, thank you, society. Now, there's a lot of there's a lot of possibilities for why. First of all, do you agree with
Not
that?
at all. I disagree fully.
Wow.
We become so much more open and it's just the world has become crazier. Our doors have opened much wider. We're listening to more, we're doing more, we're eating more, we're going more places. I'm asking you a question. 10 years ago, you know anybody 10 years ago went to the Bahamas? What do you mean we're getting more now, minded? Are you kidding me? You know how many restaurants there are on one street in any town, any kosher that even Houston? Are you kidding me? We are becoming more and more and more and more open, and that's why we're having these podcasts, and that's why we're having all the issues, because nobody knows where the boundaries are going and how much we're spreading out, and where do we stop, because it's seeping in all over. I'm not saying we're to blame. The world has gotten crazier, but you knew anybody 10 years ago went to the Bahamas? You ever met a guy who went to Mexico? How many kids went to Florida? I had one boy in my class who went to Florida for midwinter. One.
I never got on a plane growing up, so I wouldn't know. So it's interesting because you're making it. You're comparing Rabbi Muller, which is I'm like this conversation was all about hashkafa and culture and sports, and you're saying that to you, that's the same.
It's such a good insight because he's saying that the hashkafa is seeping in ways that we don't appreciate it.
Right, exactly, because you turned the table and
It
said,
looks
forget sports.
kosher because
Right.
it's a glot kosher Cancun hotel or whatever. So you think it's kosher, but fundamentally, the idea that we have to go to Cancun is a treif idea.
That you have to. Again, everything is perspective. Everything is how you label it, and really, really, everything is how you look at it. And that's why it's hard to say, okay, this family should. It's good. that certain families might have to go certain places. And, whether it's for Shalom Bayis, whether it's for one of the children, so on. There are so many reasons why you should, and I will encourage sometimes a father to take a boy to a game. I will. But 3/4 of my school, I won't.
You remind me of a story. My father, Shlita, was once asked to speak. My father's a Rav for a long time, retired recently, was asked to speak in a pretty affluent community. And the topic was tznius. He was asked to speak on tznius. And he got up and he spoke about expensive cars and homes and vacations. It's like atznej aleches is atznej aleches, right? Sometimes we get so focused on Harry Potter that we forget this. So instead of reading Harry Potter, you're going to read, I don't know what, and in that magazine that you're bringing in is who knows what.
By the way, it's not, you're saying it as if it might happen. I know so many people like that. I know so many people like that who haven't brought in, let's call it the Jewish newspapers. And again, I'm not giving us commentary on any newspaper or on any magazine. But I can tell you, and again, there's fault with everything, right? We can always become better people, right? We can always work on everything and anything. But what are the options? And what's the alternative? So you're going to tell your son you can't read this newspaper or this magazine and so on and so forth. Again, if it's treif, it's treif. I'm not. But we're talking about stretching the boundaries. When do we say yes? When do we say no? What's the balance? Right. Every parent has to think beforehand. What's the option? What are the alternatives? We can't just lock everybody up. And you can go, and that's the same thing with going to a concert. To say no concert, no sports, no 24/6. You can't do that. You can't say that. You can't say those things because we're too big of a tzibur, and the world is growing very fast. And
I wonder if this is like an out of town, like a perspective. I'd like to know what you know, Chicago and in New York.
I was in Lakewood for 25 years. I was a Rebbe, an 8th grade Rebbe in Yeshiva Tveres 3 by Rabbi Moshe Grylak, and then I was Manal for 8 years in Torah Samas Kamenetz in Brooklyn.
Take that for out of town, Rabbi Garfield. You're talking to a New Yorker.
And no, I consider Chicago
but I grew up
closer to in
I grew up in Montreal, Quebec. So
okay. You have all the miles.
The 51st state.
Je parle français.
Je ne parle pas français.
Oh, here we go. Here we go.
I'm just not, I've seen it all, and
okay. This is my question.
I'm a Hamish guy.
I want to,
I know I'm close to many Rebbes, with many Gedolim, had a connection with Litvish Gedolim, Chassidish Gedolim. It's not. There's a broad perspective here, and again, it all depends. You cannot make a blanket statement. This is us or this. It just can't.
My question is that it seems to me, for my kids who go from Houston to some of them went to schools and yeshivas in New York or camp, there's much more of a group think in town. Meaning, I feel as a parent in Houston that I could influence my children's entertainment or what we do a lot more than I feel like in town. There's like this group expectation, like this thing you were saying, like everyone does it,
Like the mob mentality.
Mob mentality. Is that true? And what would you advise people, parents who are like experiencing that, where they feel like, there's 50 kids in their children's grade or 100, and they're all wearing a certain backpack or I don't know. Like when you go to camp, I know we send our kids to the Firma camps, and like you have to be exact in this
camp. Well, who's talking camp? We're not talking camp on this
girls
podcast,
camp,
right?
not boys camp.
Oh, okay, good.
So how does one address that?
So that's a great question. I do think in a smaller city, which I'm not going to call Chicago a small city, you have more of that, like you said. The first thing you got to do is you got to check out, verify. Is it true? Is everybody have this knapsack, this bike, these sneakers, these shoes, this headband, whatever it might be. Paper clips are already a style. You know what I'm saying? Everything has become something. So you need to really know if that's the clientele. If yes, and you've made this decision for your family to move to Houston and or any other small community, and that's what they do there, then you made yourself a decision. And it would be almost unfair to tell your child, if 50 kids in your class are doing it, 51 are not. Now, there are people who have been successful doing that, where I found that a lot is like when, almost more successful when it's like, a type of place where, it's everyone's Bali Tshuva except for them, like he's the Rab who's being Makar of the whole city, or there's one Chassidish Rebbe and nobody else is Chassidish. So then there's such a stolz of who we are. We're the Rebbe's children, we're the Rosh Hashiva's children. So then somehow they enable their family to feel so chashiv and fill it in with different things. They give them more potato cocoa. Whatever they're doing, they somehow manage to keep everybody afloat and heads above water. Usually, unfortunately, one or two kids can't handle it. Let's be open and honest. But the regular guy who's moving to a town and all there is one class, one school, and everybody's doing it, you got to do it. Unless, again, of course, it's something that's clearly tray for your Rav tells you, hey, this is no way usher. But if your Rav is the one who told you to go to Houston, and I'm assuming he holds going to the game is not the worst.
I think in Houston there's more diversity, so you could get away with more individual. But I think in town, is where the problem is. There's like less diversity.
Yeshiva Katana of Manhattan. How's that for in town?
Yeshiva Tom Manhattan. Is that I don't know that clientele so well.
It's not an in town. Our clientele is about as diverse, as it comes.
Again, but there are standards. Every parent and every family is entitled and should. I don't want to use the word enforce because we don't use that word, but we don't use rules here either. The word is expectations. There are certain expectations that our family has, certain expectation that our school has, our parents have, we want our children to have. Hopefully most of them go with the flow. And again, a big part of it is making them feel proud to be who they are. So if we do
Right.
that, then you don't have to fight with your child to watch the Super Bowl or other things or read Harry Potter. Because in all honesty, let's go back to 40 years ago again. We're all giving away our age here. There was nothing else to read. So, okay, today there is so much to read. There is so much Chalvisol chocolate. There is so much. I didn't have Chalvisol ice cream in Montreal growing up. We didn't have it. We had Seal Test ice cream. It was very good. We didn't have it.
What was it
Seal
called?
Test.
You didn't have Carvel? That's an Amerikanische food, Carvel? Haagen-Dazs?
It was
Haagen-Dazs
only when
sounds
we
French
crossed,
to
because
me.
I remember when we crossed the border, we had it. Could be now there is. I'm telling you, that's what we had every day. So it's like today there's so much good reading material we can give our children. There's so much good music we can give them. We didn't have that. If we would have listened to that one Rebbe who asked Mordechai Ben David, I'm really serious, we would almost have to go to Goyish music. It's not the case today. There's 75, there's 1,000 singers out there. So there's so much on the table. There's such a smorgasbord. I think you started your question was how do we limit and shield our children? I think it's just the opposite. There's so much out there. There's so much out there to give our children, music-wise, sports-wise, activity-wise. There's so many innovative people. We started out in our yeshiva. We have an after-school program. We have a father in our school who's running a soccer program for the younger kids. We just started now a chess program. We have 42 boys who signed up for chess after school. We have a choir. Just, and they perform twice a year by the dinner and by Hanukkah. It's great. These are healthy, good outlets. Playing instruments. The Walder Center in Chicago has a science center. There's so much that we didn't have. When I had to do something, I had to go to the Y in Montreal and try and break my teeth speaking French to people like Rabbi Garfield just tried. Oui. So there's so much out there in a sense. We just have to be strong enough to, be balanced and keep the guards up. What's kosher, what's not. And everybody's
So what parting advice, as we wrap up, would you give a parent who is uncomfortable with what their children want to do, but lemaisa most of the kids are doing it? How would you say a parent should assess? Most kids are watching the Super Bowl, let's say as an example. The parent's not really comfortable with that, but 2/3 of the boys in the class, wherever it is, are doing it.
So it's like any question. It really depends. If you can easily take him out for pizza and buy him over, or take him to the Super Seder, obviously that's the easiest way to go. But if you have a child, and there are so many out there, boys and girls, who, for whatever reason, have a bigger burning desire for fill in the blank. Sometimes it's food, sometimes it's videos, sometimes it's sports. There are children like that. We've seen it. Anybody in chinuch knows that. So then it's dangerous. Then you have to speak to your local mechanech manal, Rav, who understands first of all, obviously, who knows your family, who knows the child, and you got to barter. Meaning let's just go to the Super Bowl. We're watching 2 quarters, no commercials. Certainly won't be Tom show.
I had a parent who called me. It was a younger kid, and they from Yeshiva Katana, and there were a bunch of boys watching the Super Bowl. The parents didn't want it so much. What should they do with their son? So I said, I think there is social value in him. He was young, very young. They're not staying up for the whole game, but if he at least can see the first 10 minutes of the game. so that he knows the names of the teams. He knows the names of the quarterbacks. He saw a play. He could talk at the lunch table. I said, let him watch for 10 minutes and then turn it off, because this way, at least he's not an outcast.
And feeling proud of it. And I have this when I moved from Lakewood to Chicago, and Super Bowl was a bigger thing here than in Lakewood, at least 9 years ago. So my son was in 7th grade. He comes home, he heard something about the Super Bowl, and he really wants to, exactly what you said, Ari. He wants to be part of this tomorrow morning. So
Right.
I wasn't criticizing him. Now, like, if there's another social piece here,
We have to set that's the after the podcast conversation of how what do we do with
correct,
our children,
correct.
but that's not for the
but no,
audience.
in all honesty, I said, what? Listen to it. I told him to listen to it on the radio, and he was sleeping within 10 minutes. It was in his ear. He fell asleep, and it was all over. And like you said, he felt good. I empathized. I validated, and we gave him that piece. It wasn't, and it was over by the next morning. There was nothing terrible happened.
Yeah, that's a very insightful thing again, Ray Muller, about finding that balance, right, and knowing the tchulas hanefesh.
But to scream and say it's treif and this and that, unless it's really treif, not worth.
I'm going to call you back when the Chicago Bears are in the Super Bowl. We're going to have another conversation about this, by the way.
All right, Ray Muller, thank you so much. We really appreciate you coming on and sharing your insight, and you really did give us a lot to think about, so we appreciate it so much.
Okay,
Shkach. Thank you.
Take care.
That was really, really awesome. A great conversation with a chashuv mechanech, and really, I get chizuk, Rabbi Garfield, from speaking to chashuv people and insightful people, and menalim that, and I think, I think it's not just menalim. I think rebbeim, kids. I think our chinuch system is so much better than it ever has been in terms of the way in which we approach parenting and children and gifted children and struggling children and just all different areas of chinuch and avodas Hashem. And every time we bring in a manal like this, or a Muller, who you just hear the balance, you hear the
The
picture,
insight, the real understanding of kids, like what they need and how to make sure you're not overreacting. And it's a real art. It's a real art.
It really, really is.
We are lucky we have Manalim Ray Muller around and thinking and leading. And
Yes.
it really was good.
So
Wonderful.
wonderful. Before we sign up, I think you part of your, I think it's in the fine print of your contract, is you have to give the email. I don't give the email. That's not. I don't give email. You have to give the email.
I get
right?
my hands dirty with that. But I would say that we've been getting great questions. I wish a little that we could do a few more each time, because right now, thank God, we have, whatever number of great questions in the hopper.
In the hopper.
But we still will put out the email because it is.
When
great
are we gonna
to-
have, Garfield? When are we gonna have like one of those like live events with parents and take questions and do one like a road
like
show?
at the Grylak conference?
No, I don't mean live like that. I mean like a Zoom where you invite parents on to like a Zoom, you know what I mean? And then you take questions from the audience.
You know what? If our listening audience wants that, they should send us an email to thelearningcurve@mishpacha.com. Please send us any of your questions, comments, or ideas. We love hearing from our listeners at thelearningcurve@mishpacha.com. And please make sure to share our podcast with anyone you think would enjoy it or they wouldn't enjoy it.
And we are
Also,
now
you can
on.
share
Just to note, we are now on the solo. We became not just, we're not a podcast where I think it's under Hashkafa and Torah. So the Bachrim that have been begging me to get, the Bachrim now in all the different yeshivas, in Shara Torah, in Schwartz's, in Clifton, all these Bachrim that were looking to get involved. Now they are. All right, Rabbi Garfield.
All right, all the best.
Pleasure as always.
Take care.
Take care.